I would be very happy to take some questions.
I have a couple of questions actually. One is you met with Prabhakaran, and I was wondering if you could talk about that. And the second is, we've seen the Congress Party wane and non-secularism ascend in Indian politics with the BJP. What is, from your experience standpoint of the history of terrorism, what do you think is the possible path of this wave of non-secularism and hate in Indian politics?
Going to Prabhakaran, way back in the 80s, Prabhakaran is the leader of the Tamil Tigers, one of the most committed and fierce guerrilla organizations in the world. This is a group that is so committed to their cause, they all wear their cyanide capsules, which they swallow if they're captured. So nobody, they take their secrets to their grave. Nobody is captured alive, not a single captured alive. They will die rather than be captured alive, including their leader. And way back in the 80s, we had this debate about one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. And Prabhakaran is a classic example of this. If you talk to the Tamils, they would say that he is their national hero because he is the one who stood up against the military oppression of the Sinhalese and was able to create a situation whereby the government realized that they cannot militarily win this war and therefore are now having talks. So the Tamils see him as a great hero. The Sinhalese, of course, see him as a monster, terrorist, a gruesome and, a real arch villain. And of course, there has been a number of terrorist acts that he has perpetrated, and that is why the government of the United States, UK, Canada, and even India have banned the LTTE. And for us, for me personally, it was no problem, defining one or the other. As far as I was concerned, he is both and more. It's very easy I do see him as a guerrilla leader because he did, there is a cause that he is espousing. It is not mindless violence, it is targeted violence. But the minute the violence civilians and public buildings, that is an act of terrorism and therefore you are guilty and you have to be treated as such. But in terms of his persona, I would say he is possibly one of the most remarkable men that I've met in my life. I have never met another person with such clarity of vision, such motivation, such commitment to his cause, and tremendous foresight. He could foresee, years ahead what is going to happen down the line. So I remember at a time when India was helping him and other, Tamil militant organizations, they were helping, with arms, refuge, giving them, financial support, and he was, literally, surviving because of them. Logistic support was from India. And yet, in 1985, when I met him, he told me that one day I will have to fight the Indians. And I was shocked. I said, but, you are taking all the support from India, and you're even living, at that time, they were all, taking refuge, and he himself was living in South India. How can you say that you're going to fight India? He says, his thing was that, Sri Lanka is an island nation with about 18 million people, and Tamils are a small minority that live the northeast part. But the Tamil ethnic people also live in India, and that's 55 million Tamils live in South India. So Prabhakaran's reasoning was that India will never allow the separation of Sri Lanka, a division in Sri Lanka along ethnic lines. There will never be a Tamil homeland if India can help it, because the minute that happens in Sri Lanka, India will have to face a similar situation within India. The Tamils in India would want to secede. And there was a Tamil secessionist movement in India in 1962 in the same, South Indian province of Tamil Nadu. And at that time when he said it, I said, oh, but you can't fight India. I mean, these are, guerrillas, and, when you see them, they're so simple, they're so ordinarily dressed. I mean, they're, some of them have combat fatigues, but most of them are just in a shirt and a sarong and bathroom slippers and, so guerrilla-like. How can you fight this, India, the world's third largest army, and so on and so forth? And he says, no, I mean, if I'm committed, I will, if there comes a situation, I will fight. I'm not interested in winning or losing, but if I have to fight, I will fight. And, when I reported that, everyone said that I was romanticizing Prabhakaran, and, there's no way that this, leader of a small organization in a small little country like Sri Lanka can, take on their might of the Indian, military machine. And he did. 2 years later, he did. He fought, and it was a terrible situation. There was terrible loss on both sides, but he did. And it is a fact that when you talk to the Indian establishment, yes, they have every reason to prevent the breakup of Sri Lanka, because India, as you know, we are like Europe. I mean, we have different provinces, each with its own language and culture and history and cuisine and everything. They're completely separate. And if one province, if Tamil in Sri Lanka got their independent homeland, that would encourage the Tamils in Sri Lanka, in Tamil Nadu, to do the same in India. And we have different provinces. As it is, we've had problems in Punjab and Kashmir that wanted to secede, and then we've also had situations in the northeast. So this is something that India would always prevent, and he was very, very clear about that. And even about talking about whether he would get his Elam, he's fighting for his separate state called Elam, and he said at that time, whether I get Elam or not, this is in the 80s, he's saying, whether I get Elam or not would depend on domestic factors as well as international factors. And the reality is that there is a feeling, and even though, of course, Prabhakaran started this peace process, or agreed, to be part of the peace process before 9/11 happened, he was pushed further into that process because of 9/11. Today there is no tolerance. There is no international tolerance for terrorism. And that has, pushed him further into the peace process. So there are these international factors that he was well aware of. But of course, at the last time that he when I met him, he said, but there is focus and focus. There is focus right now. Big countries can't remain focused on one particular subject for very long, and that could well be prophetic again. So we don't know how he can. I haven't met him now to see what his next prediction is.